So I was making a difficulty chart, Obby and Obby Creator, when my friend Noob said this.
Difficulty chart obbies are so repetitive. Don't make one.
But then, I had an idea. What if I made 7 different difficulty chart obbies and show them to Noob to try and change his mind? My first difficulty chart obby was going to be about ice, conveyors, and trip parts. I chose 3 completely random things to include in this obby, but it could still be good. I started by adding the different difficulties made out of ice. Then, I made the conveyor and trip parts. After I made the first difficulty, I tested it, and it was kind of boring. Maybe Noob was right. But this was only the first difficulty. It should get more fun in the next difficulties, right? I built some more, and then, I finished 3 more difficulties. Let's test it so far. My difficulty chart obby was so boring. I deleted of everything and came up with a plan. For the first difficulty, I'll introduce the trip part and use 3 simple obstacles. Trip part jumps, a slide, and spinning trip part jumps. Then, I place them together to make the first difficulty. For the second difficulty, introduce the icy part and combine them with the previous obstacles. Trip part jumps using an icy part, a real slide, and spinning trip part jumps with icy platforms. Finally, for the third difficulty, I introduced the conveyor and added trip part jumps with the conveyor, a slide with the conveyor, and spinning trip part jumps with conveyors. After I tested the full difficulty chart obby, I noticed how it was very short, so I added more obstacles that only used one of the parts, and added them in the obby. Hopefully Noob will give this obby a good rating.
Better obby law.
I had to make my next obbies better. The next obby I was going to be making was a speed per difficulty chart obby. This obby was going to start with the player being slow. Then, as the player progresses, the speed increases. For the first difficulty, the player will start with a speed of 8. I built a simple obby that included simple jumps. Well, you didn't really have to jump. For the next difficulty, the player's speed changed to 16, the normal speed. I made this difficulty slightly harder than the previous difficulty, and added actual jumps now. But you still didn't really have to jump. I added speed part jumps, which had speed pads you had to jump over that set your speed to 0. I also made a race that is made by an obstacle activated by a button for 10 seconds. While trying to walk to the end, you also have to avoid random cylinders and speed pads. For the next difficulty, the player's speed changed to 25. Now, I needed to make more difficult jumps. I started by making extremely long jumps, and whatever this is. I also added a time trial since you are fast. For the last difficulty, the player's speed changed to 32. I made the platform smaller and more difficult to stay on. I also added difficult obstacles like timed parts and moving parts. I also made some parts icy so that you can slip off. Now, it was time to test the obby. It wasn't the best in terms of gameplay and decoration, but I didn't have time to make it better. Noob was going to join soon, so I had to continue faster. Let's do a speed build for the next difficulty chart. Obbies. First, is a lava per difficulty chart obby. I'll place a lava part in every stage, but increase the damage every time. I just added a simple obstacle in each stage, and I finished. Next is a seat per difficulty chart obby. I used a seat part in every stage, making unique obstacles like this glitch that lets you phase through walls, a long jump, and elevators. After putting together all these obstacles, I finished the second difficulty chart. Obby. There were 2 more difficulty charts left to make. The second last one was a cart per difficulty chart obby. I added a cart ride in every stage, and made cart ride obstacles like this jump, these bumps, and even a loop. After adding the final stage, which needed you to spawn a cart and jump on top of it to get to the end, I finished the cart per difficulty chart obby. The final difficulty chart obby was a skateboard difficulty chart obby. I added a skateboard gear part in every stage, and made it so that the player needed to use the skateboard by placing an invisible lava part in the beginning of each stage. Then, I added a few obstacles that included a ramp, a tightrope, a jump, and even a loop. Well, that didn't work, so I just made a tightrope with moving parts. After adding some more obstacles, I finally finished all of the difficulty chart obbies. But then, I noticed something. None of my obbies were good, because I didn't actually want to make it. I just made these obbies as fast as 2 could just to change Noob's mind. So if you want me to try again, like and subscribe. Maybe even watch this video too, before this video ends.